Next Wednesday.
Yeah. Now, we're looking at the options for handling our online orders. They're going through the roof, and frankly, the lead time for delivery is blowing out. We need to improve our performance in this area.
Denise says we're looking at the options. Options are different solutions or answers to a problem. What is the problem? Online orders are going through the roof. Online orders are orders for goods received through the internet. And if they're going through the roof, they are increasing in number very rapidly. The lead time for delivery is the amount of time it takes from when the order is received to when it's delivered. And if it's blowing out, that time is becoming too long. We use the expression blowing out for something which is becoming too great in a bad way.
As I see it, there are three options. In my opinion, there are three options. From my point of view, there are three options. As far as I'm concerned, there are three options.
The three options are employ more people, automate, and outsource. To outsource means to use an outside company. When presenting different options, we can order them by numbers like this. Firstly, we could employ more people. Secondly, we could automate. And thirdly, we could outsource. We can also use phrases such as one option is to, and another option is to. We can also use linking words such as or and alternatively. Or we can use a combination of these methods.
Well, looking at increasing staff versus automation, we have to consider the cost. Automating has a higher capital cost than putting on more staff. On the other hand, employing more people is more expensive over a long term. Let's look at increased staff versus automation. Let's look at increased staff as against automation. Automating has a higher capital cost than putting on more staff. On the other hand, employing more people is more expensive over a long term. On the one hand, automation is expensive. On the other hand, it's more efficient.
But, although, and however.
Automation is expensive, but it's more efficient. Although automation is expensive, it's more efficient. Automation is expensive, however, it's more efficient. How likely is it that we'll see continued growth?
I'd say it's a certainty.
Oh, I'd say a high probability. Nothing certain in business.
Unlikely, possible, probable, certain. So we can say it's unlikely, it's possible, and so on. We can also qualify these with words such as very, quite, highly, or reasonably. It's very unlikely, it's quite possible, it's highly probable, it's reasonably certain. It's a certainty. It's a possibility. There's a probability. There's a high likelihood. But we don't say there's an unlikelihood. We say there's no likelihood. Finally, look at what happens when we compare more than two options.
Outsourcing is the cheapest option and the easiest in the short term. But if we want to keep the operation in-house, the best option is automating our system. Outsourcing is the cheapest option and the easiest in the short term. But if we want to keep the operation in-house, the best option is automating our system.
Today we're looking at our new widget plant being built at Southside. I've asked Barbara to report on progress and bring us up to date and up to speed.
Denise says, today we're looking at our new widget plant. She uses the present continuous tense we're looking, or we are looking, because she's telling them what they are doing and what they are going to do at the meeting now. She doesn't use the simple present we look because that is used for regular actions. Then she says, I've asked Barbara to report. She uses the present perfect tense I have asked because she asked Barbara to report before the meeting and Barbara is about to give her report. We'll look more at present perfect later. And she wants Barbara to bring them up to date and up to speed. These are common expressions. To bring someone up to date is to tell them what has happened up to the present. And to bring someone up to speed is to make sure they know all the relevant facts. How does Barbara respond?
Thanks, Denise. I'll just outline the process we've been through, identify some problems, and give you an estimate on completion time and the outcome financially.
She says, I'll just outline the process. She uses the future tense, I will, because she's talking about something she's going to do in the next few minutes.
If you recall, after a feasibility study, we put the project out to tender 18 months ago and selected EasyBuild as our project manager.
Simple past tense. We put the project out to tender. We selected EasyBuild as the project manager. These events happened in the past and they are finished.
Work commenced about 15 months ago and it's been progressing to schedule until recently.
Again, we see the simple past in the phrase, work commenced about 15 months ago. The work started at a particular time in the past. But look at the next phrase. It's been progressing to schedule. When we look at continuous events, things that happen over a period of time, we use a continuous tense. The work started in the past and it has continued until the present. This is called the present perfect continuous tense. It's here is short for it has. Try some other examples with Barbara.
Work's been going on since last year. We've been monitoring progress continuously. I've been checking the work regularly. Firstly, there's been a delay in materials, specifically steel, because of industrial issues at the suppliers. Secondly, we've lost days due to the weather. And finally, there's been a resulting cost blowout.
There was a delay. It means this delay happened in the past and there is no delay now. If she says there is a delay, she means that delay is still happening. They are still losing time. But if she says there has been a delay, she means the delay started in the past and has continued up until the present.
Managed to get another supplier now. I suggested moving the completion date back, that way there's no penalty. And they agreed to redeploy their workers until building can start again.
Redeployed means they were sent to work somewhere else. Look now.
We've been waiting for the rain to stop, but we can't control the weather.
And the cost?
At this stage, just a small overage, but I'll be watching it very closely over the next few months. With no more delays, we're expecting to complete the project just 1 month behind schedule.
What will it cost? In spoken English, this is very common.
Notes? Yes, I do. Start at the back. Now, I'd like to refer to the first graph. As you can see, this is a bar graph measuring net sales over the first 10 months of the year. I'd like to refer to the first graph. If we have a look at this graph, if I could direct your attention to the graph. Looking at the graph on the screen, you'll notice that sales rose steadily in the first few months. Then there was a marked increase in April. They peaked in May at around 3.2 million and levelled off. Then there was a dramatic drop in the following month, followed by a significant increase in August, and this trend has continued up until the present.
Tan said the sales rose steadily at first. Then there was a marked increase in April. This levelled off. Then there was a dramatic drop, and then a significant increase. In describing trends, we use two words. One of those words is a noun or verb. For example, we may talk about an increase or a decrease in numbers. Other words for an increase are rise, climb, improvement, upturn. Most of these words can also be used as a verb: to increase, to rise, to climb, to improve. Other words for a decrease are fall, decline, worsening, downturn. These also have verbs from them: to decrease, to fall, to decline, to worsen. So we say there was an improvement in the figures for April, or the figures for April have improved. There has been a decline in sales since June, or sales since June have declined. But we often add more descriptive words, adjectives and adverbs. Remember, adjectives go before nouns, and adverbs go after verbs. These describe the change in figures. Was it big or small, fast or slow? Other words for a big change are significant, marked, massive, pronounced, substantial. Most adjectives can also be made into adverbs just by adding ly or ly. There is no adverb for big, but informally we say a lot. Other words for small are slight and insignificant, and their adverbs slightly, insignificantly. Other words for a fast or quick change are sharp, dramatic, sudden. And again we add ly for the adverbs. And for a slow or medium change, we can use steady or moderate, and the adverbs steadily and moderately. Now, try changing the phrases from noun phrases into verb phrases. For example, if Tan says there was a dramatic increase in sales, you say sales increased dramatically. Have a try.
There was a steady rise in sales. Sales rose steadily. There was a significant fall in sales. Sales fell significantly. There was a slight recovery in sales. Sales recovered slightly.
What was the reason for the sudden drop in July?
This was mainly due to a drop-off in air conditioner sales, so it's a seasonal effect.
Could it be a consequence of the negative effect of the interest rate rise?
Due to. The drop in sales is due to an interest rate rise. A consequence of. The drop in sales is a consequence of an interest rate rise. Because of. The drop in sales is because of an interest rate rise. A result of. The drop in sales is a result of an interest rate rise.
This is a line graph of sales. The blue line represents air conditioner sales. The red line shows heaters. As you'll note, air conditioner sales dropped steadily from January to July, bottoming out then, while heater sales experienced a sharp increase from March to June, then dropped markedly from June to July, then declined through to September with a pronounced drop in October.
He says air conditioner sales bottomed out in July. This means they reached their lowest level. Then he says they experienced a sharp increase. And he says there was a pronounced drop in heater sales in October. Pronounced here means significant or large. Finally, look at how Tan talks about his pie diagram.
If we look at this pie diagram, you can see that air conditioners and heaters together represent more than half of our total sales, but they vary seasonally, while other appliances are fairly steady through the year.
Tan says air conditioners and heaters represent more than half of sales. This means they account for more than half of the sales. We could put this another way. More than half of sales are represented by air conditioners and heaters. We could say washing machines represent 15% of sales. Washing machines account for 15% of sales. Washing machines make up 15% of sales.
Thank you, John. I'm going to look at the results of our customer survey.
What is your topic? For this, Tan uses the future tense, I'm going to. He could also have said, I will. And instead of look at, he could have used other words. Examine, analyse, review, discuss.
First, I'll go through the survey questions, then summarise the results, and finally I'll outline the conclusions. After that, there'll be time for questions and discussion.
Introduction, then Part 1, survey questions, Part 2, survey results, Part 3, survey conclusions.
After that, there'll be time for questions and discussion.
Sequencing words are words like firstly, secondly, thirdly, then, next, finally, after that, following that, and later on.
So, let's start with the questions. Turning to the results, let's move on to the conclusions. Let's move on to the conclusions. The first one is that it's very important that salespeople on the floor know about our products. Another is that after-sales service is critical. Let's move on to the conclusions. The first one is that it's very important that salespeople on the floor know about our products. Another is that after-sales service is critical. Let's move on to the conclusions. The first one is that it's very important that salespeople on the floor know about our products. Another is that after-sales service is critical.
Let's look at the diagram and how we can describe numbers or statistics. First, Tan says most people decided what to buy at the showroom. Because more people decided at the showroom than at home, we can say most, the majority, or over half. To describe people deciding at home, which is less than 50%, we could say a minority or less than half. Looking at the reasons for decisions, we are comparing 4 groups of people. We can use descriptive words such as many, some, a few. And we can say the greatest number or the highest percentage. The greatest number of people went by the salesperson's recommendation. We could say only a few relied on advertising. And we can use words like approximately, about, nearly, over, and under. Approximately 1/3, about a quarter, over a quarter, under a third.
The first one is that it's very important that salespeople on the floor know about our products. Another is that after-sales service is critical. People who experience good after-sales service are more likely to recommend a brand. And finally, advertising. It's expensive, so we need to make sure we're getting results.
So, to summarise, state your topic, outline the structure of your presentation, Use signalling and sequencing words. Pay attention to intonation and stress. Use descriptive words and adjectives, not just numbers.
I'd like to end with a summary of what I've looked at today and some recommendations.
Barbara says she'd like to end with a summary and some recommendations. When ending a presentation or a talk, you may do this with a summary. This is a short statement of your main points. With a conclusion, which is a result of all the information you've presented, or recommendations, which are things you think should be done.
I'd like to end with some recommendations. I'll finish with a summary. What can we conclude from all this? Figures show that sales are strongly seasonal and that customers depend on good information on the showroom floor. So I'd like to recommend we concentrate on discounting in the off-seasons and spend more time on briefing our sales representatives. In summary, to summarise, I'd like to recommend that my recommendations are... That's all I have for now. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? I'll answer any questions now. Does anyone have any questions?
At the end of a talk, you may ask for questions, or for comments, or for a general discussion. You need to let your audience know what you want them to do, like this. Are there any comments? I'd like to open it up for discussion. Let's look at how Denise asks a question.
You mentioned that the sales figures may also reflect economic trends. Can you expand on that?
You mentioned that. You suggested that. You stated that. In the question, you can you expand on that? Can you clarify that? Could you explain that a bit further? Listen to...
Well, we are always going to depend on the economy. As I understand it, we can look forward to an improvement this year. Does that answer your question?
I understand it. Far as I know, or my information is that... Does that answer your question?
Are you saying we're in for a period of growth?
Well, I'm afraid that's a bit outside my area of expertise, but that's what the papers are suggesting.
Are you saying... So you're saying that... So are you suggesting that... If I follow you, you're suggesting that...
Suggested that we might be spending too much on advertising. Can you clarify that?
It's hard to quantify without better data.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
We don't have the figures to really know how effective our advertising is.
You suggested that, then asks her to clarify by saying, can you clarify that? And Tan asks her to repeat something simply by asking, could you repeat that?
No. In my experience, you can't do without advertising.
In my experience. She could also have said, in my opinion, or as I understand it.
Time for one last question?
I have one.
Yes, John.
Is it time for coffee?
Okay, we'll wrap up now. Thank you for your input, everyone.
Thank you.
Time for one last question. Practice some phrases you could use to end a presentation.
Time for one last question. Are there any more questions? I think we'll wrap it up now.
So remember, after a talk, give a summary and perhaps some recommendations or conclusions. Ask for questions or comments. When asking questions, state what you understood from the speaker first, and then say what you want them to do. Clarify, or explain, or expand.